In August of 2016, a car that originally sold for around $4,000 crossed the auction block at RM Sotheby's in Monterey, California. The hammer fell at $13.75 million, making it the most expensive American car ever sold at public auction. It was a Shelby Cobra, the very first one ever built. At least, that's what the seller claimed. And here is where it gets interesting. Only about 998 original Cobras left the Shelby American factory between 1962 and 1967. Replicas outnumber the real ones by at least 10 to 1. Factory 5 Racing alone has shipped roughly 6,000 Cobra replica kits since 1995. For every authentic Cobra on the road today, there are 10 copies trying to pass as the genuine article. The price difference between a good replica and a real one can be $13 million. And the Cobras aren't even the rarest cars Shelby ever built. Carroll Shelby created prototypes. That disappeared for 50 years. Race cars that spent decades rotting in Mexican junkyards, and street cars so terrifying that their own buyers returned them in a panic. Some of these cars exist in numbers you can count on your fingers. A few of them, you only need one finger. These are the 10 rarest Shelby cars ever produced. Number 10. The 1970 Shelby GT 350 and GT 500. How does a car that was never actually manufactured end up being collectible? That's the question that has divided the Shelby community for over 50 years. In the summer of 1969, Carroll Shelby ended his partnership with Ford. The relationship had soured as Ford took more and more control of the cars that bore his name. By 1968, the Shelbys were essentially being assembled on Ford's own production line at the A.O. Smith plant in Ionia, Michigan, with Shelby's involvement reduced to little more than approving design changes he increasingly disagreed with. He walked away. The problem was inventory. Ford still had 789 unsold 1969 Shelby Mustangs sitting on dealer lots and in storage yards around the country. Fastbacks, convertibles, GT 350s, GT 500s. Nobody was buying them. The muscle car market was softening, insurance rates were climbing, and the sticker prices on these Shelbys were steep enough to push buyers toward a Corvette instead. Ford's solution was creative, legally questionable, and required federal supervision. They reserialized all 789 cars with brand new 1970 vehicle identification numbers. The FBI oversaw the entire process because altering a VIN is a federal matter. The only physical changes were a black chin spoiler and 2 black hood stripes. Everything else, the engines, the interiors, the sheet metal, the date codes on every part, was pure 1969. Among those 789 new cars, only 57 were GT 350 convertibles. Just 27 of those had 4-speed manual transmissions, and only 10 combined the 4-speed with factory air conditioning. A 1970 GT 500 convertible described as one of one in its exact specification, sold at Meckham, Kansas City in December 2023 for $286,000. Purists call them rebadged leftovers. Collectors call them the last Shelbys ever made. The fact that the FBI had to get involved in the paperwork is either a warning sign or a selling point, depending entirely on who you ask. Number 9. The 1968 Shelby GT 500 KR convertible. The KR stands for King of the Road, and the story of how it got that name is pure Carroll Shelby. In early 1968, Shelby's team learned that Chevrolet was planning to use the phrase King of the Road for the upcoming Corvette marketing campaign. Shelby checked with his lawyers, discovered that GM hadn't actually trademarked the phrase, and filed the paperwork himself. He secured the rights and slapped the name on his own car before Chevrolet could do anything about it. He stole a marketing slogan right out from under the largest automaker on the planet, and then he put it on a Mustang. The GT 500 KR packed the new 428 Cobra Jet V8, conservatively rated at 335 horsepower on paper but producing well over 400 in reality. Ford underrated nearly everything during this era to keep insurance premiums manageable for buyers. A car listed at 335 horsepower cost a lot less to insure than one honestly rated at 400 plus. Everyone in the industry understood the game. The KR was a mid-year introduction in April of 1968, produced for only about 3 months before the model year ended. Within that short window, only 318 convertibles rolled off the line, and the rarity gets layered from there. Only 267 had the 4-speed manual. Only 36 combined the 4-speed with factory air conditioning. Certain color combinations are almost impossible to find today. Just 4 were finished in lime gold with specific option packages. 4. A Raven Black GT 500 KR convertible, one of only 5 in that color with factory air, sold at Mecum, Dallas in September 2024 for $330,000. The overall record for a KR stands at $495,000, set in January 2025. And that wasn't even the part that surprised collectors. Number 8. The Shelby Series One. This is the only car Carroll Shelby ever designed from a completely blank sheet of paper. Every other vehicle with his name on it, the Cobras, the Mustangs, the Vipers, the Dodge collaborations, started as somebody else's platform. The Series One was entirely his. It featured a carbon fiber and fiberglass body over an aluminum honeycomb chassis, powered by a GM Oldsmobile Aurora 4-liter dual overhead cam V8, producing 320 horsepower in standard form. Oldsmobile refused to share the ECU calibration codes, which limited output from the planned 350 to 320 right out of the gate. A factory supercharger option pushed it to 450 horsepower, and the combined supercharger plus X50 suspension package reached 540 horsepower, in a car weighing only 2,650 pounds, with near-perfect 49.51 front-to-rear weight distribution. On paper, it was Carroll Shelby's masterpiece. In practice, it was cursed from the start. GM pulled promised development funding. Welding jigs warped during heat treatment, throwing off chassis tolerances. The convertible top didn't attach properly on over 60 cars. Build costs spiraled, pushing the retail price from an already ambitious $85,000 to over $175,000 per car. The contract manufacturer, Venture Industries, went bankrupt in 2004, the same year that General Motors discontinued the entire Oldsmobile division, killing the engine supply. Car and Driver's test car destroyed 2 clutches, threw an engine pulley, and blew a piston. Their review was not kind. Only 249 were completed from a planned 500. About 80 received the factory supercharger. A mere 11 got the full supercharger plus X50 package. Tony Stewart's example sold for $175,000 on Bring a Trailer in 2021. Most trade between $85,000 and $150,000, making the Series One arguably the most undervalued car that has ever worn the Shelby name. There's a reason this story isn't over. Number 7. The 1967 Shelby GT 500 Super Snake. One car. That's the entire production run. 1. When Goodyear needed a promotional vehicle for its new Thunderbolt tire line in 1967, Chief Engineer Fred Goodell dropped a 427 cubic inch Le Mans specification racing engine into a GT 500 Mustang. This was the same engine that powered the Ford GT40 Mark II to its famous 1-2-3 sweep at the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 1966. Aluminum heads, forged internals, medium riser intake manifold, and the iconic bundle of Snake's exhaust headers. The total output sat somewhere between 520 and 600 horsepower depending on who you ask, stuffed into a car with a stock Mustang unibody. Carroll Shelby personally drove the car to 170 miles per hour on Goodyear's 5-mile test oval in San Angelo, Texas. Goodell then completed a 500-mile endurance run averaging 142 miles per hour. The Thunderbolt tires held up. Everything else about the car was absolutely terrifying. Sales manager Don McCain proposed building 50 of them for public sale at $7,500 to $8,000 each, which was more than double what a loaded 1967 Corvette cost. Shelby American management reviewed the idea and killed it. Too expensive, too much liability, too difficult to warranty a racing engine in a street car. The sole prototype was eventually sold to 2 airline pilots for $5,000. They spent their weekends drag racing it. That car sold at Mecum, Kissimmee in January 2019 for $2.2 million, setting the record for the most expensive Mustang ever auctioned at the time, from $5,000 to $2.2 million. If those airline pilots held onto it, they'd have made a return that would embarrass most hedge funds. Number 6. The Shelby Cobra 427 SC. The SC stands for Semi-Competition, and the name tells you everything about how this car accidentally came into existence. Carroll Shelby needed 100 examples of the 427 Cobra for FIA homologation, which would have allowed the car to compete in international GT racing. He only managed to build 53 before the deadline expired. The FIA rejected the application, homologation denied. Shelby was left holding unsold race cars that couldn't legally race in any sanctioned FIA event. His East Coast sales representative, a man named Charles Beidler, proposed a creative solution: strip just enough race equipment to make the cars street legal. Add a full windshield, some exhaust baffles, and road tires to what was essentially a full competition machine. Then sell them as the fastest street cars money could buy. 31 SCs were built this way. The 427 cubic inch Ford FE side oiler V8 produced between 410 and 485 horsepower depending on carburetor configuration. In a car that weighed just 2,355 pounds, Ken Miles demonstrated a 0 to 100 to 0 mile per hour run in under 13 seconds in 1965, on period tires, on a period road surface. Nothing else on the planet could match that number. Shelby marketed the SC as the fastest street car in the world, and nobody could credibly argue with the claim. Recent auction results confirm their status at the top of the Cobra market. An SC sold at RM Sotheby's Monterey in August 2024 for $3,030,000. Another brought roughly $3.1 million at Meckham in January 2026. They consistently trade between $2 and $4 million. And the cars ahead of this one on the list are even harder to find. If you're finding this interesting, hit subscribe. I cover rare and forgotten American cars every week. All right, here's where things get serious. Number 5. The 1965 Shelby GT 350R. The R stood for competition, and Shelby's team treated that designation literally. The GT 350R was a stripped, race-prepared version of the first Shelby Mustang ever made. No heater, no carpet, no sound deadening, no radio. Plexiglass replaced the glass side windows to save weight. The trunk held a 34-gallon fuel cell instead of luggage. The 289 cubic inch K-Code V8 was breathed through a Holley 715 CFM carburetor, a high-rise aluminum intake manifold, and tri-Y exhaust headers, producing over 350 horsepower in a car that tipped the scales at just 2,550 pounds. 36 were built. 2 factory prototypes and 34 customer race cars. They dominated SCCA B production for 3 consecutive seasons, from 1965 through 1967, establishing the Mustang as a legitimate competition platform for the first time. The most famous individual, GT350R, is serial number SFM5R002, known as the Flying Mustang. It was the very first competition Shelby Mustang ever completed, and Ken Miles drove it to victory at its debut race on February 14, 1965, at Green Valley Raceway in Smithfield, Texas. A photographer captured the car fully airborne during that race, all 4 wheels off the ground, creating one of the most iconic images in American racing history. After a career that included over 10 first-place finishes in 1965 alone, the Flying Mustang passed through a series of owners and eventually ended up in a yard in Monterrey, Mexico. It sat there for nearly 20 years before being rediscovered in 1989. The car won Best in Class at the 2015 Pebble Beach Concours d'Elegance, and then set a new auction record at Meckham Kissimmee in January 2025 at $4,070,000. Another notable R model, SFM5R538, Charlie Kemp's car, holds the title of winningest Shelby competition car ever built, with 32 race victories and 17 consecutive wins. It sold at RM Sotheby's for $984,500. Even standard Provenance GT 350Rs typically trade between $720,000 and $1 million. Number 4. Little Red. The 1967 Shelby GT 500 EXP. This is the only Shelby GT 500 notchback hardtop coupe ever built. Every other GT 500 from that era was a fastback. Little Red was serial number SFM 0131, the second GT 500 ever completed in November 1966, finished in candy apple red, and powered by a 428 V8 with twin Paxton superchargers. It served as the development prototype for what would become Ford's popular 1968 Mustang California Special. After its experimental duties were finished, Little Red vanished. The standard procedure for factory prototypes was to crush them and send the remains to a smelter. The Shelby community assumed Little Red met that fate. For over 50 years, it was the holy grail of missing Shelbys. Historians, collectors, and SOC registry researchers searched for any trace of it. Magazine articles were written speculating about its destruction. Nobody found a thing. Then, in 2018, during the restoration of another famous Shelby prototype called the Green Hornet, Barrett-Jackson CEO Craig Jackson challenged restorer Jason Billups to track it down. Billups started pulling VIN records, cross-referencing Ford documentation, and tracing ownership chains through decades of Texas DMV files. On March 3, 2018, they drove to a property in rural North Texas and found the car sitting in a field, covered in dirt and reskinned with mismatched 1968 Mustang body panels. The owner had been driving it as a regular car for years. He had absolutely no idea what he was sitting on. A painstaking 2-year restoration returned the car to its original twin-supercharged candy apple red experimental specification. Little Red and the Green Hornet were unveiled together at Barrett-Jackson Scottsdale on January 16, 2020, with Carroll Shelby's grandson Aaron Shelby in attendance. Craig Jackson has publicly stated that the car will never be sold. He's starting a foundation to ensure that Little Red and the Green Hornet are never separated. Some Shelby historians have called the pair priceless. Given the circumstances, that might actually be the right word. Number 3. CSX 2000, the very first Shelby Cobra ever built. This is where the entire legend begins. February 1962. An AC Ace chassis shipped from Thames Ditton, England, arriving at Dean Moon's speed shop in Santa Fe Springs, California, where a Ford 260 cubic inch V8 producing 260 horsepower was fitted into the engine bay. The finished car hit 0 to 60 in 4.2 seconds and topped out at 153 miles per hour. Carroll Shelby had his proof of concept. The problem was that he had exactly one car and needed the world to believe he had a whole fleet of them. So, he pulled a stunt that would get you laughed out of any business school. Shelby repainted CSX 2000 multiple times, sometimes between magazine photo shoots on the same afternoon. A journalist from Road and Track would photograph a yellow Cobra in the morning. Over lunch, Shelby's crew would respray it blue. A reporter from Car and Driver would show up that afternoon and photograph what appeared to be a completely different blue Cobra. Both magazines ran stories about Shelby's growing production operation. There was no production operation. There was one car, one garage, and an industrial quantity of automotive paint. The con worked. Ford increased its commitment to the program. Dealers placed orders based on the press coverage. The Cobra went into actual production. Shelby built an entire automotive dynasty on what was essentially a paint-based confidence trick. CSX 2000 stayed in the Shelby family for over 50 years before crossing the block at RM. Sotheby's Monterey auction in August 2016, the hammer fell at $13,750,000. Some purists have questioned how much original material actually survives after decades of repainting, driving, demonstrating, and restoration. The debate hasn't settled, but nobody disputes what CSX 2000 represents. Without this single car, without this one audacious bluff, none of the other vehicles on this list would exist. Number 2. The Shelby Cobra Daytona Coupe. 6 cars. That is the entire production run. 6 cars that accomplished something no American manufacturer had done before, and none has managed since. The Daytona Coupe was designed by Pete Brock, who was 23 years old at the time, fabricated by metalworker John Olson, and refined by Ken Miles and Phil Remington at the Shelby American Workshop in Venice, California. The problem was straightforward. The standard Cobra Roadster topped out at about 157 miles per hour on Le Mans Mulsanne Straight, and the Ferrari GTOs were pulling away on every long straightaway in Europe. Brock's aerodynamic camtail body, built on the same 289 Cobra tube frame chassis, added over 25 miles per hour of top speed, hitting 196 on the Mulsanne while using the same 289 cubic inch V8 with 4 Weber 48mm carburetors, producing approximately 385 horsepower. In 1965, those 6 Daytonas won the FIA International Championship for GT manufacturers, beating Ferrari on their home continent. The championship-clinching victory came at Reims on July 4, 1965, with CSX 2601 driven by Bob Bondurant and Joe Schlesser. An American car beating Italian exotics on Independence Day? The writers at Shelby American could not have scripted that timing if they had tried. Ford then reassigned Shelby to the GT40 program in 1966, effectively shutting down the Cobra racing effort. A planned 7th Daytona, the 427-powered Type 65 Super Coupe, was never completed. Every single one of the 6 Daytonas survives today. That makes it one of the only works racing programs in motorsport history where every chassis still exists. The prototype, CSX 2287, was lost for 25 years before being rediscovered in a California storage unit in 2001. It now sits in the Simeone Foundation Automotive Museum in Philadelphia, and in 2014 became the first vehicle added to the Historic Vehicle Association's National Historic Vehicle Registry. CSX 2601 sold at Mecum Monterey in August 2009 for $7,250,000 during the financial crisis, a price most experts considered well below true market value. Hagerty currently values a number 1 condition, Daytona Coupe, at $29.4 million, and some analysts believe a public sale could push toward $40 to $50 million. 6 cars, all surviving. each one worth more than most commercial buildings. Number 1. The 1966 Shelby Cobra 427 Super Snake. 2 were built. One is gone forever. Chassis CSX 3015 started life in September 1965 as one of only 23 full competition 427 Cobras, cars that were already among the rarest and most dangerous vehicles in the Shelby catalog. After returning from a European promotional tour, Carroll Shelby had his shop-bolt twin Paxton superchargers onto the 427 cubic-inch Ford FE side-oiler V8, pushing output to approximately 800 horsepower. The car weighed 2,550 pounds. The power-to-weight ratio was, and remains, completely absurd. The backstory involves Carroll Shelby's friend and attorney, Stan Mullen, who kept losing to Ferraris during high-altitude road events near Lake Tahoe. After Ford's famous 1-2-3 sweep at Le Mans in 1966, Shelby decided to settle the argument on the street as well. Road and Track tested CSX 3015 and christened it the Cobra to end all Cobras in their February 1968 issue. The second Super Snake, chassis CSX 3303, was built for comedian Bill Cosby. Shelby handed Cosby the keys. Cosby drove it exactly once, was so completely terrified by the experience that he immediately returned the car and then turned the whole ordeal into a comedy routine on his 1968 album 200 Miles Per Hour. In the bit, Cosby describes the car as actively trying to kill him. Given that CSX 3303 had 800 horsepower, weighed about as much as a modern compact sedan, and had no traction control, no anti-lock brakes, and no stability management of any kind, he was not exaggerating. CSX 3303 was then sold to another buyer who, in a move that surprises absolutely nobody familiar with the car's power output, drove it off a cliff and into the Pacific Ocean. The car was destroyed. That leaves CSX 3015 as the sole surviving 427 Super Snake on Earth. It has crossed the Barrett-Jackson auction block 3 times, selling for $5.5 million in January 2007, $5.1 million in January 2015, and $5.5 million again in March 2021. Some market analysts believe it could become the first Cobra to break 8 figures if it returns to auction. Carroll Shelby once described CSX 3015 as the greatest car he ever built. The greatest car I ever built. Coming from the man who created the Daytona Coupes that beat Ferrari, the GT 350Rs that dominated American road racing, and the very first Cobra that launched an empire on nothing but one car and a lot of fresh paint, that is a claim that carries serious weight.